Hello, it's Julie. This video is going to be a little bit more chatty, so I have my tea and I'm ready. So I watched Ariel Bissett's video about being a minimalist book lover, and it made me think about how I manage my collection. I don't really adhere to a minimalist philosophy, but my philosophy when it comes to my book collection has changed over the past years, so I thought I'd share that journey with you. So until a couple of years ago, I owned books just to own books, and kind of for the status of it. I owned a lot of classics and books I thought I should read. So as my shelf space grew more cramped, I started thinking less about the should and more about having a collection where I was the curator. So I began to think whether each book was worthy of being in my collection. I kept more of the pretty books and got rid of a lot of the classics with slightly more ugly covers. Getting rid of books became easier because I had my Goodreads to account for all the books I had read, so I knew I wouldn't forget that I'd read a book even though it wasn't on my shelves. This also helped me use the library more, and using the library more has helped me buy fewer books. So now my rule of thumb is that I keep books that make me happy when I see them on my shelves. Of course, I also keep books that I would like to reread. And since classics are often free to read on a Kindle, I don't keep many of them. So now it's quite easy for me to get rid of books I've read and not liked particularly well, and also books that awaken bad memories when I see them on the shelf. It's a bit more difficult getting rid of books I haven't read yet, but I know I will not get to. In a way, it's kind of like admitting defeat, but I am getting better at realising that this book's probably not for me, and if I want to read it in the future, I can get it from the library. But with all this curating, I still feel the book guilt when my unread books scowl down at me as I bring in yet another load of library books. So as recently as yesterday, I got rid of 3 books I hadn't read and 2 books I had read and not liked. It's a bit of a relief not having those 3 unread books on my shelves anymore, because I was never in the mood for reading them. One thing that happens though, now that I'm using the library more, is that sometimes I read a book that I absolutely love that I've borrowed from the library, and of course I want to have it in my collection and look at it on my shelf. But then I'm out book shopping and I have, for example, a set amount of books that I can buy. Do I spend that money and that space in the number of books on books I have read and loved, which is kind of boring because you know what's going to happen in them? Or do you buy new books that you haven't read but are excited to read? We'll see how this year's book buying goes, but my thought is to do a mix of both. So that was all I wanted to say for the moment on my curation of my book collection. Let me know if you have any tips and tricks, or maybe you do it in a completely different way, and I'll see you next time. Ha there!